Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I'm your host, along with my co-host, Dani Hatch. Welcome to the Utah Film Pod, Dani. How you doing?
Good. Kind of.
Kind of? I sensed some hesitation there.
No, you should have seen my face along with it. It's my favorite emoji to use, like with the teeth gritting, just like,
Oh.
Yeah, my expression all week. No.
Oh, yeah?
Well, it's just funny. We talked about this before starting up the recording, but this might be kind of an off episode for us. I've just been so incredibly busy, semester's wrapping up and all that, and just like a whole bunch of responsibilities, and then you haven't been feeling that well. So we've just had a little bit of an unlucky streak trying to get something going.
It's been, it has been, well, because our last official episode was before, our last any episode was just before the Oscars, and so which is now a couple weeks ago, and we'd been getting on kind of more of a weekly rhythm, which is we'd still like to hope to do, but yeah, no, if my voice sounds a little bit different, I'm coming off of like my second cold in a month. Which just, well, it's one of those things where it's not a really intense cold, and it's the kind of thing where, well, this could just be allergies, and maybe, I don't know, it might actually be allergies, but it's enough to kind of, you can't justify not doing the things you need to be getting done, but you also can't enjoy like anything fully because you feel just a little bit off your game.
Yeah.
And then you said, like, in addition to just kind of the end of the semester stuff, there's some particular things you've been working on, right? Wasn't there some kind of an event this past week?
Yeah, there's been so much. It's like, which thing? Yeah, well, I mean, for one thing, with school, I've been a producer for a student film, so that's been, taking up a lot of my time. But we also had a booth going on at Weber this week, just to kind of talk about the changes to the Weber film program. It's going to be really, really great. I really like the changes they've made to make a very individualized experience for each student so they can pursue the area of film they're interested in. So
cool.
And it was fun hearing like the variety, some people really interested in technical stuff or interested in writing. So yeah, that's the fun thing about film, is like that variety, right? So
yeah, right.
So that's been really good, but again, just takes up so much time.
Yeah, but compounded with the rest of the end of the semester stress that's just happening anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, finals that I'm in denial about and everything. So.
Oh, good old denial. Denial, so lovely.
But anyhow, I do want to circle back to what you said, because I kind of want to pick things up where we left off, even though it's been so long. In case people didn't know, Oscars happened, and
right.
But wow.
there's some new news, right?
There's some new news that has come out, and just recently, I think it was just 2 days ago. The Academy has banned Will Smith from returning to the Oscars for the next 10 years, I believe. And yeah, I don't know, that whole saga has been so interesting to watch. And I mean, like, the way that everything's unfolded, I feel like it's very much it feels all very inevitable with how everything, I mean, you can't allow him to come back. That's putting people at risk, even though, I don't think he's a risk to people, but it's you have to be so official with all of these things, right? So.
Well, yeah, I think that's, I was thinking about this morning because I knew that we wanted to talk about it and kind of weigh in and just, I don't know. I mean, if there's anybody listening to this who isn't fully aware of what the situation was, because I mean, it's been pretty widely publicized. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, because, halfway through the broadcast, Chris Rock gets up to present an award and starts making jokes and makes a joke about, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair because, and she has, alopecia or something like that. And there's kind of this awkward moment, and then Will Smith goes up on stage and slaps Chris Rock. And which on the one hand, I think is just really, really sad because that's what people are gonna remember about this broadcast.
Yeah.
And instead of, oh well, this was the great moment when Will Smith finally won his Best Actor Oscar.
Yeah.
It's, oh yeah, this is the one where Will Smith got up on stage and smacked Chris Rock, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really sad in that regard, just kind of, and that might be the biggest takeaway from it. But kind of like you say, like it's such a, well, he technically went up and assaulted the guy on live television.
Yeah.
And so you can't just laugh it off. You can't just brush it under the rug. You have to address it somehow, even though, like you say, I mean, there's no way that Will Smith is now like a security risk to be at a gathering of other Hollywood, elites.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like it was a very specific circumstance that was strange enough that a lot of people even debated whether it was real, or whether it was some kind of prearranged,
like a stunt
setup.
Yeah,
like a stunt that just really, like, when I was thinking about it this morning, the phrase that kept coming to mind was half-baked. Like whether it was a stunt that just didn't come off or whether it was real, in either case, it just, because there's the question of, oh, well, he was laughing just fine, and then all of a sudden he gets up and slaps him, and was it because his wife was angry and he didn't notice right away? And so it just, I mean, I'm just basically restating everything everybody else has kind of been
that's the
tossing
thing,
over.
is that this is, especially like, almost 2 weeks later, it's been talked to death. I will say though, conversation has been very interesting, and I had a moment in one of my classes where I was very concerned by the discussion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, it's just, I think it's kind of this huge societal shift about free speech and stuff like that. But, a group of college students who have, very passionate opinions, a teacher goes up and he's talking about the situation and just saying like, it wasn't a cool joke to make, and obviously it struck a chord with Jada, right? But he posed this as a question, and I think he meant it more rhetorical than it ended up being, but he said, just because you don't like something someone says, does that justify violence? And like the whole class, and there's a variety of opinion too, like political leanings and everything, as I've noticed with all our discussions, but basically everyone was like, yeah. And my teacher kind of stepped back and was like, no, that's kind of like what you said, that's assault. That's not an appropriate thing, even if you don't like what someone says. And I think Will Smith's speech was really beautiful. But I feel like the hard thing with the actions that he took, it kind of negates what he said a little bit. Whereas like if he went up and, said that same exact thing, we see that strength of characters, like, oh my goodness, what a guy who like really will defend his family. And so, there's kind of that debate, but just seeing how, I guess, us youth of today, like a big agreement we have is that violence can be justified like that. It's I was very concerned, and I think at the end, by the end of the discussion, I think everyone was just fired up by it, because everyone was so charged on social media. But by the time we ended our discussion, it was just kind of like, okay, everyone was a little out of line, but especially you shouldn't hurt someone. So I think eventually we got to that point, but just that initial emotional response is just like, whoa, it's kind of, I don't know, a little alarming. But yeah, that's been my takeaway from the discussion.
No, and that's really interesting that would be such a unanimous response, right? And when I hear that, I think about, well, this especially becomes complicated because we're kind of in a cultural moment where, the actual definition of the term violence is a little more ambiguous, or is is there are people who want it to be a little bit more ambiguous than it's been in terms of like what constitutes violence, and so it is kind of cool to think that the discussion lasted long enough and was dynamic enough and, you know, useful enough that it ended in a place where everybody was able to get a little bit more perspective and kind of think things over, because I mean, that's what a discussion is supposed to be, right?
Oh,
is,
yeah.
You know, you kind of, everybody comes in with, okay, well, your first reaction to this is X, and let's talk about it for a little while and see if you still feel X or if you think maybe Y is a better option. And I don't know, like, considering the way you've described, you know, having a classroom with lots of different political perspectives and ideologies, you know, it's kind of nice to hear that a productive discussion occurred. So,
I know, it feels like a rare
good for you guys.
right?
You know, it's like the opposite of cable news, so good for you.
I know, we did it. We did it. That might be my last plug for Weber for the day, because, like,
there you go.
I feel like a lot of schools strive for that, like, diversity thing, but, like, Weber actually just is very naturally diverse, I think. Not, like, you know, trying to aim for it, but in a way where it's, like, we can all be different and discuss and be respectful. Like, I don't know. I'm a big Weber fan, so it's been wonderful. But yeah, so
it's
that
good to
happened.
hear.
But hey, you know what? Like you said, that slap kind of overshadowed a lot of really good things that happened with Oscars. Like, hey, Coda winning.
I was gonna say, so the Oscar party that I traditionally attend was canceled, and so I didn't actually watch the Oscars live this year. But I was really kind of happy and surprised to find out that, you know, and because I want to say that this was probably the first time, certainly that I can think of, where my absolute favorite movie of the year won Best Picture, right? Because there have been plenty of Best Picture winners that I liked, you know, films that I did enjoy, that I support the idea of this winning Best Picture. But I can't think of another time when my just favorite movie actually won. And this was definitely that case, because Coda was far and away my favorite movie from last year. So good on them. That was, you know, too bad that other things might kind of overshadow it in the history of the awards, but you know, we take what we can get, I guess.
Oh yeah. No, I was really happy about that win. So everything else I was a little confused by, but what else is new?
Yeah. Well, now, so you know, getting back to Will Smith, at least with his win, was it a surprise or was it disappointing that he won Best Actor for you when you were hoping for Andrew Garfield? Or,
yeah. Well, I was,
it's been a couple weeks now. So are you feeling?
Yeah. I'm over
okay
my morning.
Now?
No,
you're over. The morning is over.
Especially after what Mark said, I think it just made sense that Will Smith won. So I wasn't too surprised when it happened. He prepared me sufficiently, because I wasn't following like all the other like BAFTA and stuff like that, like I should have been. So you know,
it does. It does. There's definitely a I guess kind of a process or a path or a trend.
Yeah.
That's a pretty strong indicator.
No, and you guys pick up on that stuff pretty well. No, what I was surprised by was more just that, like, Dune swept.
Oh, in so much of the...
Yeah, and it just, I don't know, because, like, I guess maybe I grew up with the participation award kind of group where I'm just like, but no one else got to receive awards that should have gotten at least something, you know? So that was kind of more my feeling there, where I just wanted that more equal split, I guess.
And I think that would make sense, I guess. Because see, now I'm going through my head and I'm trying to think of what some of the other options were. But like, I don't have a problem with a movie dominating the awards if it's really that good and that much better, right? And Dune was really good. I mean, I really did enjoy it, and it really had some spectacular, you know, the sound and the visuals and
the visuals
and
I totally saw. Like I didn't know who else
right.
would have won. Yeah.
But you know, I'm just trying to think. Well, is it that much better than all the other candidates?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe because like I said, I'm having a tough time of thinking what some of the other ones were, which maybe suggests that Dune was that much better. But But it is kind of unique, especially, but because I thought that putting it in the running for Best Picture was a bit of a stretch, just because the ending for me was so abrupt and unsatisfying. That okay, this is a good movie. I'm really excited to see the sequel, but man, this thing just kind of leaves you hanging, and not necessarily in a because it wasn't a cliffhanger. It's like, okay, we reached this spot. Now it's time. It felt like an intermission.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of weird to think of it as a Best Picture, because it's a piece. It's, a very explicit piece of a bigger whole. But anyway, I mean, I guess I still was able to get credit for, the things that were a little more finite about it, if you'd have to look at it that way. So yeah, I don't know. So some good, some bad, some not sure what to make of this.
Yeah.
We'll check back in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? If anything, I do think last Oscars kind of showed kind of a good progression back to, I don't know, a good ceremony. Like, it wasn't quite perfect, but like, there were some good awards and some good moments. So I'm hoping we're kind of steering back in a good direction. Because like, I'd say before COVID, like that was when Parasite won and Jojo Rabbit got, I think, screenplay or something like that. Like, there were a lot of great wins and great moments that year. And then COVID hit, and like, it became this awkward dinner party, like we talked about. So
right. So no, that is encouraging. Yeah. So maybe that'll be one of the, it's a step back towards normalcy, or whatever normalcy is going to be from here out. So
exactly.
Cool. Well, so what else is happening?
Well, there were so many movies I tried to see, but again, just time wasn't on my side. But there is a series that I binge watched.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I never do that. Fortunately, it was short enough where I could justify it. But I watched season 2 of Bridgerton very recently.
Okay.
Which, it was... I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And I don't know if that's... Maybe I feel a little guilty about that. Because, like, I didn't watch the first season because I heard, like, where it's just, like, Pride and Prejudice, but super scandalous and all that. And, I had heard that this one toned it down on, like, all the sex and inappropriate material, and it was kind of more just the whole romantic tension, and I love that kind of stuff. So it was good romantic fluff, and I needed that kind of escapism. But something, because I found myself recommending it to people, and like I thought I was going to watch this in secret, and then no one would ever know.
But you've now announced it on a podcast.
Here's why, because I have been recommending it to people, because I was so impressed by this is not a word, but like ensembleship of it, where like I was just really impressed by the whole cast and like all the side plots, and just anytime there was a character in the background, like they just were very interesting to watch. So like it's just I think it's that combination of directing and acting where it was way better than I thought it was going to be for that reason. Like I just thought it was going to be super focused in on that romance, but there were a lot of fun things happening all throughout. So I was very impressed by it, surprisingly.
So did you have trouble jumping into the second season when you hadn't seen the first season, or is it pretty self-explanatory?
I think it was pretty self-explanatory. I'm sure I didn't understand the characters well enough, but like I like Bridgerton was so big when it came out, so like I kind of got the gist of it. I recognized the faces. But I do think they make it very easy to jump in, especially if you're like me and you didn't want to watch the first one because, it kind of went against some standards, morals you may have. I think the second one was, a lot cleaner, easy to jump in. I imagine that you might like the characters more too, because I feel like everyone was kind of scandalized in the first season. I don't know. This is my hypothesis. but like, everyone was kind of, went over in the deep end for the first season, but in the second one, you're kind of going in thinking that everyone's fine if you don't know what happened. So
okay.
like
so
there were no.
So ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. So no, I've definitely really enjoyed that, and I mean, part of it might be because I'm kind of a romantic too. So if you're into that kind of stuff, I watch it through VidAngel because I know there are still some scenes where it's still got a mature rating. There's some one plot line is that a brother is like taking art classes, so he's like painting naked people. So I think again, like, thanks to VidAngel, ignorance is bliss. So I have no idea.
At least we got you watching series now.
Baby steps. My husband's working on me for
Baby
Moon
steps.
Knight next, so we'll see if next episode I've seen it.
Well, and to be fair, I haven't watched it yet myself either, so we'll see if.
Which, Bridgerton?
Of course, that's. No, well, I haven't seen Bridgerton either, but Moon Knight, I haven't watched any of those. I have actually covered a few movies, which we're going to get to here in a second. But no, Moon Knight, I haven't watched any of that. Although in my case, it's less a resistance to series than a. Okay, so there's another Marvel thing to so there's it's more hesitation. Well, plus I've been. Because I probably, like a lot of people, I'm always kind of like working my way through a series or reworking my way through a series. I'm kind of in a bad place where I can, if I'm at home and I'm eating, I'm also watching TV. I don't just sit and eat at the table, and and so I just finished rewatching Alias again.
Oh, good.
The Jennifer Garner series from. Gosh, about 15 years ago now, quite a while. But then I've also, like, at the same time, I've kind of been toggling back and forth, and I finally started watching iZombie, which I think was a CW series at one point, but I just been watching it on Netflix. So anyway, so with those series in place, I haven't been taking the time to go into Moon Knight yet, but. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, let's hear about the movies, though, because I'm definitely more interested in those.
What's relevant to the Utah Film Pod? That's a great idea. Let's do that. No, like I said, there have been a few coming out. It definitely feels like we're kind of picking up the the springtime releases, and things are feeling a little bit bigger and a little bit more featured. But I figure we start off with. The most present release comes out. We were recording this on the 9th, and I believe it came out yesterday officially. The new Michael Bay movie, Ambulance, which I've got to say this has got to be one of the more frustrating movies I've seen recently, and maybe in longer, because there are some things that I really, really liked about this movie. And some other things that just ruined it for me, and so I'm, where you can usually just kind of sway one way or the other in general, and say, oh yeah, no, that was a good movie. I really liked this and this and this, or this is a terrible movie, blah blah. This one just like, it's not even really middle of the road either, because there are a lot of just kind of meh, shrug of the shoulder movies that are like the classic 2.5 stars out of 4 because. Yeah, it's got some good bits, but it's, got some lame bits. This, like, the extremes are more extreme.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, I could see that.
And I'm like, all of this setup, I need to actually, explain the movie itself. But my takeaway from it was that, this thing drove me crazy because there were some elements of it that I really liked so much. And then there were some other elements that just completely undermined it and just killed it. And it just feels like... It's instead of just kind of shrugging and walking away, or being a forgettable movie like Morbius, right? Because that was kind of my take there, was that Morbius was not bad, it's just very forgettable. Yeah. With Ambulance, it's frustrating. Like, it's actively frustrating. And I think the way that I would explain it is that it starts off as one kind of movie, but then the longer it goes, elements of other genres kind of, and certainly style points, start to kind of bleed into it and just kind of rot it away, kind of poison it. I don't know. Like, so the movie itself is like a heist caper type of thing, where it's about a couple of brothers, and one of them is like a career criminal. He's like this infamous kind of bank robber, and that's the Jake Gyllenhaal character. And he's got like this one big job he's trying to pull. And his brother, who's played by Yahya Abdul Mateen II, is not he's like chosen to get away from the criminal life because it's kind of a family thing. Like their dad was this big time robber as well. But the brothers, and it's like Jake Gyllenhaal's character is Dani, and Yahya's is Will, right? So Will kind of decided to not follow the family plan, but he's in desperate times. His wife needs some help with surgery. There's like an experimental, she's got some medical problems, and so he needs to the long story short, he winds up having to join in on this big score. And so the first part of the movie is about this, this bank heist gone awry, where, and I say this hesitantly for reasons that will follow, but it feels a lot like Heat, the crime drama from the 1990s with and Michael Mann did it, and it was with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And just a really fantastic movie, just a really, really great kind of crime drama, and it's built around, it's got this really incredible robbery sequence, and you get probably a good 45 minutes to an hour into Ambulance, and it's like, wow, this is really intense. Like, this has really got me locked in. This is pretty cool. Like, it's it's not quite at the level of something like Heat, but there are enough similarities and there are enough good things happening that it's kind of, wow, no, this is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And so in the meantime, so basically the heist goes awry, and then Will and Dani wind up escaping by carjacking an ambulance that has come on the scene to assist with the wounded, including a police officer. And so one of the officers, he gets shot. They're taking him away on the ambulance, and Isaac Gonzalez plays the EMT. Cam is her character name, and so she's in the ambulance with this cop, and then Will and Dani hijack the ambulance, and so then it turns from Heat into like an ambulance version of Speed, right?
That's what I was kind of giving those. I was getting those vibes from the trailer. Yeah.
Right. And so most of the movie is kind of like this extended high, low, high speed chase, as all of the cops in town are swarming this ambulance and trying to get them to stop and trying to get and they're trying to keep the cop alive, because as long as the officer's still alive, the full vengeance of the LAPD won't come down on them, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so the concept is pretty cool. Yeah. And a lot, like I said, you get quite a ways into it, and it's like, wow, this is pretty intense. This is pretty cool here. But, and here's where everything goes wrong. Michael Bay eventually just becomes Michael Bay.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, when you said there were some really, really good things, I'm like, yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal, and then there were some really bad things. Yeah, Michael Bay,
No, and I feel, so, I mean, I need to clarify this, because I don't want this to come across like a Michael Bay bash, because, to be fair, I really, really enjoyed 13 Hours, and, from a couple of years ago, and, about, the terrorists, and kind of the U.S. Special Forces guys. I think they're Special Forces who were kind of fighting things off and kind of had to get everybody through the night. And like, that was a really cool movie, and it kind of got away from a lot of his kind of, cliched style choices, and light years from the Transformers movies. And so it's like, I think he has some really great capacity with the right subject matter and with kind of like the right amount of restraint. And early on in Ambulance, it feels the same way. Mm-hmm. But then slowly over the course of the movie, especially in the second half, there's just more and more of kind of like the same kind of ham-fisted, corny, just eye roll type of elements that squeeze in. Like for one thing, and this is pretty consistent throughout the movie, but it's more tolerable early on because the rest of the movie is pretty good, is like the camera work is just way over stylized. Like they're just trying to pull moves just to kind of show off, and like what's the most crazy thing we can do with the camera to get like a weird angle on what's going on. And and I've never been the type who's been really thrown off by shaky cam or handheld or anything like that. But this just seemed to be like doing loop-de-loops for the sake of doing loop-de-loops, and almost literally in a couple cases there are a couple of moves where it's just kind of, well, it's really crazy that you did that, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
But what's worse is that because a lot of Michael Bay movies have like just these intentional, they're supposed to be kind of comic relief supporting characters, and the kind of dialogue and the behavior and the attitudes, and so for example, one of the main underlings for Dani that he has to call periodically, and it's like this serious situation, but of course the guy is just kind of a bumbling idiot, and he's really loud and obnoxious and says lots of stupid things, and it just undercuts the credibility of what's going on, and seems to try to take it and shift it from like a legitimate, strong kind of action crime drama, and turn it into something more like Con Air or The Rock, kind of like these more kind of cartoonish, would be a good word to describe it, where it goes from feeling real and legitimate and intense to comic and a little more ludicrous, and just it killed it, and then it just kind of dragged out, and oh my gosh, it stinks because I really like a lot of things about this, but and it wasn't even a matter of, from the very beginning all that stuff was there, and so you're just thinking, oh, this could be so good if you just take this out. It was more this gradual progression where the more the movie went along, it became more and more hard to take seriously, and so it just kind of rotted away.
Yeah.
And that's Ambulance.
That's such a bummer. So because of that, do you think it's still maybe worth it to see it for those good things, or do you feel like this is going to be just more for those Michael Bay diehard fans?
See, now that's an interesting comment, because I'm trying to think, like, who are the diehard Michael Bay fans? But maybe that's a discussion for another time. Like what I would, to answer your question more directly,
yeah,
I would say this could be a decent $5 Tuesday. I can't in good conscience say go spend full price to go see this movie. I can't say that people wouldn't enjoy it in certain contexts. Like, I think just like watching it, streaming it at home could be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And there's enough good that you won't feel like, oh, that was a complete waste of time. But the movie is flawed enough and disappointing enough that I can't just like wave the flag for it and say, oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
So it feels like kind of like a milquetoast reaction, but like, I would wait and watch it streaming.
Yeah.
Or, if you have to see it in the theater, I wouldn't spend full price on it. But I mean, there are things that you would definitely like and enjoy, but there will also be plenty of opportunities to kind of roll your eyes. And, if you completely enjoy the Michael Bay style, the slow motion swinging right to left while a character shot from a low angle steps out of a car, there's lots of, there's that kind of stuff is there. And the performances are good, and the actors and characters are fairly likable and stuff. But it's, I don't know. I guess, like I say, when you start comparing a movie to something else that's better, it never goes well.
Yeah.
And
no, that's fair.
So that's kind of, yeah, I don't know. Like, because like I say, I don't want to just kind of default to, it's Michael Bay, so it stinks, right? Because he does some good stuff, and he's shown the potential to do some really great stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, too much of his kind of fallback gimmicks undermine what the movie could have been.
That's fair.
Now, in terms of content, it is an R-rated movie. Mostly, I would say, for the language, because the violence itself, like there is some violence that, I mean, you would definitely call it R-rated violence, but I wouldn't say this is an especially graphic film. I mean, one of the most intense sections is when, they're trying to take a bullet out of the cop's abdomen, and they kind of have to cut him open and stuff. But it's not like a gratuitous violence type of movie, which just kind of seems weird because in a way, I guess, but because it definitely has the kind of profanity to get it to the R rating, but the shoot 'em up stuff isn't nearly as violent as you might expect. And then there's really no sexual content in it at all, from what I recall, which I don't know, maybe that's a positive step for Michael Bay, because his stuff does tend to be pretty exploitative. I mean, the Cam character, Isaac Gonzalez, she's really treated quite respectfully for a female lead in a Michael Bay movie, I guess.
Interesting. Okay.
So maybe there's a positive. So yeah, so Ambulance is coming out, the weekend of our recording, and so as of the 8th it's out. On the 15th we got another pretty big one coming out, which have to admit was one of the ones that I think both of us were a little apprehensive about seeing when we were doing our preview for the year.
Oh boy, yeah.
It's the next Fantastic Beasts movie, The Secrets of Dumbledore. Got to see that one, check that one off the list, and I don't know. I think the best thing I can say about it is that I didn't resent it nearly as much as, was it Crimes of Grindelwald? Was that the second one?
Oh yes, yep.
Because that one, I presume it's because of COVID. Because I mean, did that come out in 2019? Was that? I mean, it's definitely a pre-pandemic release.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
But so it came out so long ago, and yeah, so Secrets of Dumbledore did not agitate me nearly as much as Crimes of Grindelwald did, but it still got the same problems.
Oh,
and
dang.
You still, well,
no, it's okay. I've really been anticipating what the verdict would be on this, because like I'm with you. Like I loved the first one because I'm not like super invested in Harry Potter, but I'm interested enough in the world. And I probably mentioned this before. I'm really invested in the world, so like I want to see like what does the Wizarding world look like in different years and different locations, and I really loved that. I loved seeing adults using magic in the real world. I thought that was fun. But then the second one was just like, it was kind of torture to work through because it felt like a very long trailer for the third one. So I've been wondering about this third one, where it's like, what's this big payoff we've been building up to?
I've like, I don't know. So, okay, maybe I should back up.
Okay.
And set this up, and we can, because there are all kinds of things that I want to say.
For sure.
But I think I should probably give a little bit of context before I pass some of this on. So yeah, third movie in the series, Crimes of Grindelwald, if I can remember, and that's the thing, is like it's been so long, and I disliked the movie so much, and it was such a mess that I was kind of reassembling my memories as I was watching the third one. But it's the Harry Potter world, like what, 7,500 years before Harry Potter. So we're back in, was it like 1920s?
Yeah, the 20s, I think.
1930s.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so this is kind of it's prequel territory. We're watching Albus Dumbledore, who's played by Jude Law, and there's this character that's played by Eddie Redmayne, and I say, like, because one of the big problems here is there's no protagonist. Like, there's really not one person you're following, and so it's kind of an ensemble thing, but it's also just kind of disconnected storylines that are kind of loosely connected, and so anyway, so we're making our way through a Harry Potter adjacent saga that, so Grindelwald is kind of he's like with Voldemort, I guess. His big deal is magic people versus Muggles, and why any blending of the two, any purebloods and stuff, is his big crusade is to wage war on the Muggles and bring the magic people out from the shadows and have them rise to the to take their deserved state at the top of the humanity's food chain, or however you want to describe it. And plot wise, the whole movie is about a rigged election. Seriously, like it kind of dawns on you about halfway through this movie that, like, this is all like a political intrigue story with weird magic, subplots. And so, which kind of reminded me of Attack of the Clones, right? Because that's one of the criticisms of a lot of the, the Star Wars prequels, is that they were focused way too much on, civics and political intrigue and this kind of stuff that's just not very interesting. And with regardless of how you feel about that, because Dani, as I recall, you actually, are more of a defender of the prequels, and we might have to save.
Well, absolutely.
Save that.
And I do actually like political intrigue. I find those conversations can be very interesting if done well and not super preachy. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, not just that, but it's just kind of like courtroom dramas. Like courtroom dramas can be really fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
But if this is supposed to be kind of like an exciting action adventure fantasy story, then bogging it down in, suits having conversations about policy, and it just doesn't work. And even though it's not quite that bad in Secrets of Dumbledore, it's effectively a story about the bad guys are trying to manipulate an election to get in power. And it's probably, there are going to be opportunities to try to make connections to our, recent events in the real world that are not quite so explicit that they're transparent, but, I'm sure they had some things in mind when they were putting this together. Anyway, so Grindelwald, and he's now played by Mads Mikkelsen, because Johnny Depp, persona non grata anymore, and so he's the bad guy. He wants to get rid of all of the the non-magic people, and so he's basically got this plot to rig the election so that he can get into power and kind of bring his constituency, to the forefront, etc. And so Albus Dumbledore is working against him, Newt Scamander working against him. There's the subplot with Ezra Miller's character, Credence, from, who's kind of carried over from the first movie, and the quote-unquote big reveal, he said sarcastically, was at the end of the second movie, was that I guess he's related to Dumbledore. There's also the plot about the Jacob Kowalski and what's her character's name?
Queenie.
And Queenie, because at the end of the second movie she joined with the bad guys, and so yeah, it's, I don't know, there's a lot going on. There's not really a focus.
Okay.
But you're watching it and kind of thinking, oh, well, this is watchable. You know, this is fine. You're just kind of going along with it, and it's not a big deal. Even though, like you say, it's like, well, this is kind of weird because this movie is really just about a rigged election. You know, but there's kind of like a magical fantasy element to it because the way they're rigging the election is by tampering with this mystical creature that is supposed to be able to have like some great wisdom in terms of selecting leaders, right? And that's kind of where Eddie Redmayne's character comes in because, of course, he's like the caretaker of all of the magic fantastic beasts, right?
I wondered how they were going to finally bring back the animal aspect of it because second movie it was like completely gone.
Right. And to be honest, this feels forced. Like it's not bad. It's just kind of, and that's why I say like the individual elements of the movie are okay. And as you're watching it early on, it's just fine. But by the end, it kind of feels like it's just dragging out and you feel you eventually, I guess if you are, you know, kind of agree with my perspective on these movies, you kind of get to the same place where you're just thinking, why are we doing this? What is the, you know, it's one of the things that really bothers me, and I've noticed this in a number of different movies, is when they try to make a big deal out of moments that haven't earned that emotional catharsis. Because, and granted, you know, Fantastic Beasts has its work cut out for it, right? Because it is a branch off of the Harry Potter tree, and the Harry Potter movies, you know, you had this huge foundation from the books, you know, with fandom and understand, you know, kind of the depth of the world and the universe and all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, when the big events happen in those last couple movies, you know, or certainly at the end of the sixth movie, you know, and for the sake of it, who doesn't want me to spoil anything, right? Like when a character dies, you really feel like a tragic loss because you spent and invested so much time with these characters.
Yeah.
And then so when like something, not even necessarily a death, but just like when something big happens in Fantastic Beasts, it kind of feels like, sorry,
so
you're not there. Yeah, you haven't earned this. Like, why is the music swelling like this? Why are you behaving this way? This isn't a big deal. I don't care. I'm not invested. And there's that. And I just think that these movies they have a way of reminding you of what made the Harry Potter movies so good and the Harry Potter stories so good. You know, namely that we're watching, you know, in the case of Harry Potter, we're experiencing this world through the perspective of children, and we're growing up with them, and we're watching them grow, and the fantastic and magic aspects of it seem very, very natural and very really wonderful and fun. And seeing that same kind of stuff played out exclusively through the eyes of adults is just not the same thing.
Yeah.
Because so much of Harry Potter was about coming of age, and nobody's coming of age in Fantastic Beasts. It's just kind of, you know, there are kind of already fully made characters. And so that I think is always going to work against it. I think that the fact that this is technically a prequel series, which means that you're going to have to find some way of developing and manipulating a plot to get it to a place that's predetermined, is just so hard.
Yeah.
You know, to make it feel and happen naturally. And then you pointed this out. Well, you alluded to this earlier, and I thought this was a real key here. It's because you talked about the time frame, right? Because this is happening in the early 20th century. And I think one of the things that made Harry Potter so interesting was that it was like this old-timey 19th century aesthetic and behavior happening concurrently with our modern world, right? In the 21st century.
Like it was kind of out of time a little bit.
Well, there was much more of a dissonance. Yeah. It was like by crossing over to the magic wizarding world, you are not just changing from non-magic to magic, but you're also going back in time. And so there's much more of a visual, you know, experiential change. Whereas with Fantastic Beasts, it's kind of all the same thing, and we're watching it from the perspective of the 21st century, and so it all feels like stepping back in time anyway. And so it's kind of interesting to see that time period, but it also doesn't have the same effect because, you know, it's not like you're at a regular train station and then suddenly vanishes through a wall and now there's this extra landing, you know, that's all magic and stuff. It's, you know, it just kind of feels like it's happening. The whole world of the 1920s, 1930s feels foreign anyway. And so having magic people in that world doesn't feel like as much of a unique thing. I don't know.
That is so interesting. I never thought about that being something that would take away from kind of the magic. Like, I know we've talked about the whole, like, the, you know, you're taking away the coming of age kind of aspect to it. But the part of that magic aesthetic is that it's kind of in dissonance with the modern world. So that's very interesting. I did like the time jump in the first one. Because maybe it's just because, like, I like the 20s or something. Like, you know, I thought it was a fun aesthetic, just generally speaking. And the comments you're getting is making me
it's
wonder.
Not bad. Yeah, it's not bad in and of itself.
No.
It's just something else that makes it harder to reach the impact level of the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, it's working against it for sure because you're kind of I mean, I didn't even consider this, but, you know, just all these, like, little choices that take away from the magic of it. And not just the magic in the literal sense with it, but kind of that movie magic, the setting magic, you know, like the more film elements that, take away from it. That's interesting. But I do wonder with what you're saying with the politics kind of side of thing, where that was another thing that I really liked about the first one was how do the two worlds mix together. I loved Jacob just as a character in the first one. I thought not only just for the comic relief, but just seeing how he fits in with the magic world, or, like, you know, doesn't fit in, seeing things from his perspective. Like, I really enjoyed that. But then the second movie, it was very much, I don't know, it was kind of weird where it's like, okay, we have this issue and we're not going to resolve it. And I'm guessing they have to touch on it in the third one. But so I wonder if that might still be a pull for me. But I don't know.
So tell me, which issue are you specifically referring to? I mean, I won't give it away, but I can.
No, I mean, this is something that's kind of explored from the very beginning, so it's not a spoiler, but just Jacob and Queenie's relationship.
Oh,
and
okay,
it's like, you know, the forbidden love or whatever, you know, they can't be together. And,
right.
I mean, that's why she joins the bad guys in the second one, right? And so I thought that was interesting, but it's like he waited until the very end of the movie to do anything interesting with these characters and their relationship. So I don't know.
Yeah.
They have to touch on it because it was so big in the second movie. So yeah.
No, and it's a big, I mean, it's one of the dominant subplots of the third movie for sure.
Yeah.
And I would say that his character is kind of, you know, one of the stronger foundations of the series.
Oh,
you know,
sure, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of unique because unlike Harry Potter, you know, he provides because you know how a lot of times there's a character that is really supposed to be the stand-in for the audience. You know, you are watching this crazy weirdness through this character's eyes. You know, I think Han Solo was that character for Star Wars, right? Because he's outside of the world of the Force and the Jedi, and the one kind of, you know, a little skeptical, a little bit like, well, this is kind of weird, you know?
Or even Harry Potter in the original series, right? Because everything was brand new to him, right?
Right. No, that's a good point, right? And so with Jacob, it's, you know, he really is one of the best aspects of this thing, and that is consistent. And that remains true with the third movie. Unfortunately, it's not enough to make you feel like, I don't know.
And it's a side plot, you know, like you said, it's a main side plot, but it's not the main plot. It's going to be the main reason why I'm watching, but yeah.
No, and I mean, when I kind of get into these situations, I always wonder, am I just being unfair because is it possible to evaluate Fantastic Beasts apart from Harry Potter? Just in the, I mean, this is, since we brought up Harrison Ford, I guess this is not too far of a jump, but typically when people, talk about the Indiana Jones movies, it's like the first one was awesome, the third one was awesome, the second one wasn't nearly as good, right? Mm-hmm. The Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And of course this is, because the fourth one never happened. But but taken by itself, Temple of Doom is still a pretty fun, pretty good action movie, right? It suffers by comparison more than because of its own individual, shortcomings. Mm-hmm. Those, or it's like the comparison just highlights those shortcomings, and so I kind of feel like, well, with Fantastic Beasts, is it a matter of this is just a bad series, or is this just not as good as Harry Potter, which had the benefit of 7 books and years of fandom and build up and stuff? But I don't think so. Like, I think by itself, Fantastic Beasts is still just really flawed.
Yeah.
It lacks a protagonist.
Yeah.
It's, I just don't feel as invested in these storylines. I don't care as much about these characters.
And a lot of what saves it is that it's in the Wizarding World, Like, if anything, that's kind of helping it. And I think we have every right to compare it with the original because these production companies are using the IP. They're using the name to try to promote it. So, like, they're the ones who want the connection.
Well, and I have to say, too, that knowing, at least at the time, I have no idea if this plan is carrying over, but, the idea that, there's going to be 6 of these.
Are
what?
there?
Well, I remember hearing that at one point.
What?
And like I said, I don't know if that's still the plan.
I thought this was a trilogy. Oh, man. Okay.
Oh, no, it could have been. Maybe I should have done a little research beforehand, but I remember between like the first and second movie hearing that like the plan was there's going to be 6 of these movies altogether, and just kind of, which, hey, that's a little ambitious, don't you think? Given that, how about you earn it first, right?
Yeah.
And so it's possible that they've scaled back. Like I'd like to think that if let's just say that if they decided to cap it off after these 3, they would be okay doing it. Like there's enough resolution that they could, and that I don't know for sure if that's the plan or not. Mm-hmm. I just know that at some point the idea was that there was going to be like 6 of these movies, and it's just it made I know for sure that it made the second movie that much more exhausting for me to think that, oh my gosh, this is just why are you doing this?
Oh,
so
wow. That's why I was able to get through the second one, because I'm like, this is just a lead up to the third finale, sort of. Dang.
I almost feel like we should confirm it right now.
So on October 2016, J.K. Rowling announced that it would actually be 5 films.
In 2016.
2016. So maybe Fantastic Beasts 4 potential release date. That's from a day ago. So it sounds like they're still planning on making another.
Okay, so we're so at least 4. So we're not done yet, is the point,
goodness.
right?
No, that just feels like milking. Because, the first one, I thought, kind of like what Star Wars was doing with, Rogue One and stuff like that. Let's have just, little snippets of the world.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's do that, But,
no.
Oh, goodness. I really hope they don't.
No, I agree.
I think they're going to, but... Man, see, guys, this is why we vote with our dollars.
Well, and I think this connects to a bigger issue, which of course is always going to stand against the question of or the impetus to make money, right?
Oh yeah.
I think that all of this stuff, whether it's Fantastic Beasts, whether it's spin-off Marvel series and Star Wars series and anything that's kind of like these, like you say, kind of like these IPs, these franchises, is that it loses track of the idea that sometimes some mystery is a good thing.
Yeah.
That we don't need to know everything. We don't need to know how A connects to B and, how to get from A to Z. Sometimes it's just fine to know that it happened, and that, and if we go back and tell that story, aside from the obvious complications in doing, like the logistical challenge in doing it, it kind of takes away from it, because there are a lot of things that I like about the Book of Boba Fett, and yeah, I think it finished a lot better than it started. But there's still this part of me that's just kind of like, I like Boba Fett better when I didn't know anything about him.
Exactly. No, I was about to bring up that same exact thing, because I feel like that's kind of a very good recent example where mystery is a good thing.
And it's like, Jude Law is a fantastic actor.
Absolutely.
And, David Yates is clearly a great director. He did a great job with a lot of those, Harry Potter movies. But do I need to know all of the stories about Dumbledore's comparative youth? No, not really. I mean, it's so I get that, there's an industry that wants to satisfy the needs and desires of a voracious fan audience, and obviously there's the, how can we find new stories to tell and to find ways to make money, but it also has a way of simultaneously undercutting the existing content, because the mystery, and here, I mean, this is a perfect example, right? Because we're talking about a magical world, and the more we know about it, the less magical it seems.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The end. That's it. Thanks for joining us today.
So for both of these movies, maybe not so great, or would this one still be an okay one to go see?
Like I say, I think that if you're a dedicated Harry Potter fan, if you've enjoyed, at least kind of like the idea of the Fantastic Beasts, even though if it's pretty obvious they're not as good, this one you will enjoy more than the second one. You'll find more satisfying than the second one, but it still doesn't make Fantastic Beasts feel like a justified exercise. It's still, it's a poor man's version of Harry Potter at best.
Ooh.
And so yeah, it's a step up, but not enough of a step up. You're still in the basement. So, yeah, no, and you know what? Let's end on a positive note, though, because this episode I've been bagging on Ambulance, not as good as it should be, and Fantastic Beasts. Why are they doing this?
Not as good as they should be. Yeah.
Not as good as they should be. But I believe our next episode, there will be a movie to praise. So there are good things coming down the line, and and honestly, these two aren't nearly as bad as they could be. So I think reason for hope. It's springtime. Things are getting better.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. That'll be fun.
Yeah. And in the meantime, keep an eye on the website. We'll try to get more interesting content up when we can get away from our school obligations and all those other things. But but keep us surprised. Give us some comments. Let us know what you think, and we'll talk more next time.